Playwright Anton Chekhov famously said, "Never place a loaded rifle on stage if it isn't going to go off." In other words, every detail must be relevant, and every setup should have a payoff. Thus, the narrative principle of Chekhov's gun was born. But it isn't always a gun. Chekhov's Whatever is a podcast where myself and guests watch a movie and try to predict what role Chekhov's gun will play. Welcome to Chekhov's Whatever. Hello and welcome to Chekhov's Whatever, the podcast that makes a game of movies and storytelling. I'm your host, Meg Mazeski. Here with me today to talk about the 2025 comedy horror film Death of a Unicorn is Rachel Graham. Welcome to the podcast, Rachel.
Hi, happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Rachel is the co-host of a podcast called One Person's Trash is Our Treasure. This is a podcast that I consider the sister podcast to my also retired pop culture podcast, Indoors Women. Rachel, what else would you like to tell the listener about yourself?
So as you said, I was a co-host of the One Person's Trash is Our Treasure podcast, referred to sometimes as Optiot. It was a podcast that asked the question, what if we took media that was traditionally considered trashy and kind of tried to take it seriously from a more analytical standpoint? Whether we accomplished that, who's to say? We were pretty unserious when the mics were on. So, but yeah, we talked about things like, if you're familiar with Ruby Dixon's Ice Planet Barbarians, we talked about that long before you would have seen it on your local Barnes & Noble shelves.
Yes.
And yes, we did go into the blue alien anatomy.
Naturally.
Yeah.
An excellent episode, an excellent podcast, RIP Optiot. Also, You can hear Rachel's former co-host Jen on a previous episode of Chekhov's Whatever. That's my Smile 2 episode. I encourage everyone to check it out.
Yeah, great episode.
Rachel is here with me today, like I said, to talk about Death of a Unicorn. This is a 2025 horror comedy about a father and daughter who accidentally hit and kill a unicorn while en route to a weekend retreat where his billionaire boss seeks to exploit the creature's miraculous curative properties. This movie stars Paul Rudd, Jenna Ortega, Will Poulter, Téa Leoni, and Richard E. Grant. This was written and directed by Alex Sharfman. Also, this was his feature film directorial debut. At time of recording, Death of a Unicorn has a 54% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes and a 77% audience score. So, Rachel, did you have any expectations going into this movie?
I did. I was actually really excited that this was the movie you proposed we watch, because I found it, when I saw the trailer, I found it to just look really interesting and funny.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of A24 movies in general, so
Me too.
I try to catch most of them, and I thought it was going to go in a different direction than
Same.
it did. I don't know what it was about the trailer, but something about it made me think there was going to be a zombie unicorn.
Oh, interesting, because
Yeah.
of its sort of like monstrous appearance, perhaps.
Yeah.
I feel like I could just say ditto to everything you said. Those are pretty much all my feelings going into the movie. I actually briefly considered starting a podcast called A24/7, and it would just review all of A24's films, but they've really blown up in the last few years. They used to have really limited distribution, but now they distribute and produce a lot of movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, so also maybe that has changed what my expectations for an A24 film should be, because they have broadened a bit in the last few years.
Yeah.
But before we really get into Death of a Unicorn, here's a quick overview of how Chekhov's Whatever works. This is a podcast where myself and the guest watch and review a movie that's new to us. We also play a game where we try to guess what Chekhov's gun will be and how it will play out later in the movie. Chekhov's gun is a plot element that must have a setup and a payoff. That setup typically happens in Act 1, and the payoff usually comes later in Act 3. A Chekhov's gun is also typically a concrete item, action, or person, rather than something symbolic or thematic. And finally, a Chekhov's gun should move the plot forward. We get +2 points if we correctly identify a Chekhov's gun. We also get an additional point if we correctly guess how that Chekhov's gun will pay off. And finally, we lose 1 point if we incorrectly identify a Chekhov's gun and its role. Whoever has the most points at the end of the movie wins. All right, shall we get into it?
Yep, let's do it.
We open the movie with a scene on Elliot, Paul Rudd, and his daughter Ridley, played by Jenna Ortega. They are stuck in an airplane, taxiing on the tarmac. Ridley nods off and rests her head on her dad's shoulder, an unexpected gesture that delights him, but he inadvertently shrugs her off to reach for some paperwork that fell on the floor.
Yeah, this ended up kind of being a bit of a establishing moment for
Absolutely.
his character's motivations, sort of like some foreshadowing as to who he is as a father.
Yes, I think that even though the scene was maybe a little ham-handed, not very subtle,
Yeah.
nothing about this movie is subtle,
No.
but it does do an efficient it does do an efficient job of establishing the character relationship. It's pretty obvious that the dad literally chooses work over his daughter. Like, he let his daughter bang her head on the armrest so that he could reach some work documents. So definitely foreshadowing. We can see what the trajectory of this character's arc will be. And I think it's pretty fair to say that by the end of the movie, his priorities will have been reversed, let's say.
Yeah.
Elliot and Ridley are driving through the mountains to his boss's mansion to stay for the weekend. Elliot's bosses are the Leopolds, wealthy owners of Leopold Pharmaceuticals. Elliot is their attorney and soon to be their proxy on the company's board of directors, just as soon as they all sign the paperwork that weekend. Elliot thanks Ridley for being there to support him and to show the Leopolds a united family front, despite Ridley's obvious reservations about the whole thing. The relationship has clearly been strained ever since Ridley's mother died, leaving Elliot a widow as well. This is your standard exposition dump.
Yeah.
We get to know what's going on with the characters, where they're going, what they're doing there, their motivations, etc.
Mm-hmm.
They drive into a wildlife reserve, signs warning of severe consequences if any of the rare local wildlife is harmed. And we see a dark, ominous cave with eerie neighing emanating from within. As Elliot drives, he keeps sneezing and sniffling because of his allergies. This is my first guess.
Mine too.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote down Chekhov's allergies.
Yes. And what was your guess for how it might pay off?
I figured, so I do know a bit about unicorns in classic media.
Not to brag.
Yeah, not to brag. So I was pretty much expecting there to be something to do with unicorn blood. And so I did kind of expect, oh yeah, he's gonna somehow ingest unicorn blood and, he's gonna be like, I'm not sneezing anymore, which, yeah.
I feel like I'll just be saying ditto to you a lot. I also had Chekhov's allergies. I am not as versed in unicorn lore, but unicorn blood being curative is pretty common in pop culture. Harry Potter even has it. And also just from watching the trailer, you get the idea that the unicorn has these curative properties. So my guess was along the same lines as yours. And then I also have another Chekhov's gun here. So he is sneezing and sniffling and blowing his nose, and he crumples up a tissue and throws it into the center console. So I have Chekhov's used tissue. And this is me extrapolating from the curative properties and from what I saw in the trailer. I think that these properties may go so far as to resurrect someone. So I think Elliot will die at some point and Ridley will somehow be able to use the biological material from his used tissue to bring him back to life with the help of the unicorn.
Yeah. I will say I didn't write down the tissue, but I did take note of the way the camera kind of followed it.
Yes. That was my cue to me. I was like, why is the camera following the tissue?
Yeah.
Elliot speeds up, desperate to get to the Leopolds as soon as possible. He sneezes and he slams right into a unicorn as it crosses the road. Distraught, Ridley kneels beside the unicorn, its purple blood pooling on the asphalt, and she touches its glowing horn. She communes with the unicorn in an almost transcendent experience, seeing visions of colorful galactic nebulae. But she's ripped away from the vision when Elliot whacks the unicorn over the head with a tire iron repeatedly. Cut to title card.
Yeah, I didn't have a Chekhov's guess here, but I did say, I did write down unicorn horn acid trip.
Yes. That sounds like a name for a band.
Yeah, the unicorn horn touching experience was very much supposed to be kind of evoking like a psychedelic situation.
I think so too, and I think that's definitely underscored later in the movie when the unicorn horn is literally used as drugs.
Yeah.
I did get a little laugh out of this. It was a bit unexpected to have this transcendent, beautiful moment be interrupted so violently and then smash cut to title card. Maybe a little bit of a cheap laugh, but I will say it worked on me.
Yeah, I thought it was funny too.
Elliot and Ridley arrive at the Leopold's mansion with a seemingly dead unicorn in the back of their rental car. They are not going to get their deposit back.
Yeah.
Here we meet the Leopolds, the patriarch Odell, played by Richard E. Grant, who is also suffering from terminal cancer, the matriarch Belinda, played by Téa Leoni, and their cocky fail son, Nepo baby Shepherd, as played by Will Poulter.
Yeah.
What a stacked cast. I feel like we have
yeah.
a great ensemble cast going on here.
In general, I found the performances to at least be enjoyable to watch.
Yes. I feel like Will Poulter is doing the most with what he's given.
Yeah.
I think of all the characters, he probably got the most laughs for me. Even though pretty much everyone here has comedic experience, I feel like he was able to flex his comedic chops the best in this movie.
Yeah, definitely.
We also meet their female head of security, Shaw, and their beleaguered manservant, Griff, played by Anthony Carrigan, perhaps best known as NoHo Hank in the TV show Barry. Please no spoilers, I somehow have not seen the last season of Barry. I thought this Griff character and Anthony Carrigan were also standouts for me in the movie. He just has this very eye-rolly, long-suffering character here that was able to get a laugh out of me.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed his character from the beginning, and I was really looking forward to seeing him subvert something or have some sort of character development moment. And yeah.
You knew at some point he would have to get his comeuppance on his employers in some way. So you're just kind of waiting for him to get his moment of justice.
Yeah.
Ridley is still rattled by the whole experience of hitting the unicorn and excuses herself to freshen up in the bathroom, only to discover that the unicorn blood splashed across her face has cured her acne. Elliot similarly discovers that his blurry eyesight caused by his allergies has been improved. He doesn't need his reading glasses anymore. And I'm like, Spider-Man much?
Yeah.
Spider-Man glasses meme much?
I did actually have a Chekhov moment here. So this is the point where I wrote down Chekhov's vape.
Oh, Chekhov's vape.
Yeah.
Excellent.
She's in the bathroom and she notices the blood on her and she's like wiping it off and stuff, and she just kind of takes a hit of her vape really quick.
Very long drag of the vape, yes.
Yeah, so I'm thinking at this point that the vape is going to come in as some sort of it's going to end up being a source of conflict between her and her father. And I assume at this point it's going to after that conflict has arisen, it's going to be something that saves them.
Oh,
yeah.
Excellent. But Elliot doesn't have time to dwell on his newfound Spider-Man vision. The Leopolds want to get to the business at hand, giving Elliot proxy powers and them plausible deniability. But they're interrupted when the unicorn starts thrashing inside the car. Its horn glows and Ridley can feel it calling out to her. Ridley and everyone else rushes towards the commotion, but when the unicorn busts through the car window, Shaw shoots it in the head. They have a funny little conversation about what they've all just witnessed, and there's no denying it. It's a unicorn, and they've killed it. Oops.
Yep.
They had most of this scene in the trailer, which I think is unfortunate because it was maybe one of the funniest dialogue exchanges, and then to have it all in the trailer. But I guess you need to lead with your best bits, I suppose.
Yeah.
But the Leopolds no longer feel any remorse about the dead unicorn once Elliot and Ridley explain to them how the unicorn's blood has cured them of their ailments. The Leopolds know an opportunity when they see one. They're going to keep this unicorn for themselves and exploit its pharmaceutical potential. I had to ask myself, what is this movie trying to say? Because it could have just been a creature feature horror film, which would have been perfectly fine by me. But it does seem like it wants to say something, especially in relation to the father-daughter relationship. But also it seems like it wants to say something about capitalism, bad, rich people, bad, eat the rich. And it's like, okay, sure, yeah, we've heard this before. And also it's a very sort of blunt way of putting its theme. I don't know. I feel like it wanted to have a message. Yeah. And any message it had was just so obvious and trite to me that I didn't really care.
No, I completely agree. One of my notes that I have written is the Leopolds are stereotypical rich shits.
Yes.
You know, I was really looking forward to, because I'm used to A24 movies, and they do kind of have a range of quality among their lineup.
Yes.
But I was used to A24 movies, having kind of subversive things to
Yes.
them. So I was really waiting for a moment where, maybe they turn into the heroes, maybe they end up not being such stereotypical rich shits. Maybe they end up having some sort of sense of morality to them.
Yes.
But I didn't personally feel like that really happened.
I didn't feel that way either. You used the word subversive to describe A24, and I feel like that was something that really drew me to A24 films as well. I expect, or at least hope, to see something unconventional when I'm watching an A24 film, something unusual, something unique, hopefully also something kind of weird. I like that blend of all these things, but especially the subversion and the contrarianness
Yeah.
and something unconventional. At the end of the day, this movie is maybe the most conventional movie you could ever create. There's
Yeah.
no surprises, there's no twists. So yeah, this is kind of the first glimpse where I started to get the feeling that maybe there was nothing deeper going on to these characters, but also we had just met them. So I
Right.
still held out a little hope for some sort of subversion of expectations or archetypes. But
Yeah. I will say I really did enjoy the subversion of the unicorn, which traditionally would represent, purity and innocence and
yes.
instead it is turned into literally the monster of the movie. Every time you see it, it's like awful. It's
Yes.
either a mangled corpse or it's, stalking them and ready to murder. And I enjoyed that aspect of the subversion of the movie.
I do too. That's something that really stood out to me about the trailer, the core concept of what if the unicorn were the evil monster. I do like that premise. I do like that subversion of our expectations of something beautiful and whimsical and making it grotesque and scary. I did like that subversion, but also I don't know if the novelty of that premise can be sustained for the entire movie. And I think by the end of the movie, the novelty had somewhat worn off for me.
Yeah.
It's a funny joke or punchline that I don't know can really carry an entire movie. Let's look at Cabin in the Woods, for example. There's also killer unicorns, but
Hmm.
they appear on screen for, I don't know, maybe a minute. And it's like, yeah, I think that's about as much juice that this concept has, you know?
Yeah, I actually couldn't help but compare this movie to a television show that recently came out. There's a television show, it's on HBO Max. It's called Common Side Effects, and it's about this guy who finds a mushroom somewhere in the wilds of South America, I believe. And he knows that this mushroom can cure any ailment. It can even bring people back to life.
Mm,
And the show, similar to this movie, has themes of like tension between, pharmaceutical companies and
hmm,
capitalism, an industry that in theory exists to heal people who are sick, to help people. But it's an industry that, when mixed with capitalism, tends to not really work out that way, tends to maybe not be as helpful as it could be. So that show, I feel like, really handled this premise much better than the movie did.
It sounds like it just based on your description. That show was on my radar, but I haven't watched it yet. The way you've described it, though, I'm on board. I want to check it out now.
I really liked it. I thought it was very good. I think that it didn't. This movie had a very clear, moral to it, I guess.
Mhm.
Common Side Effects kind of doesn't give you the answers, it's pretty gray. Even insofar as, whether or not having access to a medication that can cure all ailments is a good idea at all.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, like it doesn't give any easy answers.
This movie is definitely missing that gray area. It's very black and white. I think it could bring up interesting questions about, do the ends justify the means? Like, if we have this ability to cure all human disease, but it comes at the cost of imprisoning or torturing these mythical creatures, is that worth the price? That could
Hmm.
certainly be an interesting question. It's not a question this movie asks.
No, and I think it was kind of teetering on the line of getting into that area,
Yes.
but it didn't ultimately land there. And I did actually have written down in my notes nature versus man theme,
Yes.
and the idea of like this nature preserve being untouched by man. And,
Hmm.
I do think that that was also a theme that they were kind of trying to, to dabble in.
Yes, man's hubris versus uncontrollable nature.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Ridley thinks that the Leopolds are making a big mistake and tells her dad not to go along with it. She tries to explain that the unicorn was showing her something when she touched its horn, but Elliot doesn't seem to understand and implores her to trust him. Forlorn, Ridley flips through photos of her mom and notices a picture of her mother alongside a unicorn tapestry in the cloisters in New York City. Using her art history major skills, Ridley researches the unicorn tapestries, also known as the Hunt of the Unicorn. Also, just a quick aside in case the listener's not familiar, this is a real series of tapestries in real life. Perhaps the one that you might be most familiar with is the tapestry called The Unicorn Rests in a Garden or The Unicorn in Captivity. And it's that depiction of a white unicorn in a flower garden surrounded by a circular fence or pen.
Mm-hmm.
When she's researching these tapestries, she also uncovers some helpful exposition. The tapestries depict the story of a unicorn that surrendered to a pure-hearted maiden, was killed by hunters, and then resurrected and imprisoned. Now, here's the part where the movie diverges from reality. The movie says that scholars believe that there were lost tapestries which depicted the full story of merciless, violent revenge exacted upon the hunters by the unicorns. And at this point in the movie, they show some fictional tapestries as part of the series and some rather gory scenes of unicorns disemboweling humans. We also see depicted in these fictional tapestries a cave and the aurora borealis.
I wasn't sure if this would count as a Chekhov moment or as just foreshadowing, but I decided to write it down anyway. I wrote down Chekhov's Virtuous Maiden legend. Because it was kind of somewhat happening in the background. There's the audio playing describing the tapestry, and it's, spanning over pictures of the tapestry. And it mentions, as she's like doing this research, that they would use a virtuous maiden to lure a unicorn in. And at this point, I was like, she's going to be the virtuous maiden, the pure-hearted maiden. At some point, she's going to be used that way.
I think that's a pretty good guess. And also the movie, once again, has a little close-up shot of the maiden in the tapestry. So it's like, this is important. Yes.
Yeah. Once again, utilizing my rudimentary knowledge of unicorns. Unicorns, another thing that they tend to be associated with or to represent is virginity or innocence, purity. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of wondering if this was going to go in a direction where they would be like, oh, we can use Ridley to lure the unicorn, and then it will come out that she's not a virgin or something. And that was kind of what I was expecting. And it would be like kind of another moment between her and her father where he would be like, what do you mean? You've never even had a boyfriend. And she'd be like, yes, I've had boyfriends or something,
That would be good. It's like the Hocus Pocus reversal.
Yeah.
That night, Ridley has a nightmarish vision of something exiting that dark cave and galloping away furiously, but she's abruptly awoken by people in hazmat suits and brought to a lab. Her father and the unicorn's body are in the lab too. We then get a science-y montage of Dr. Song and Dr. Bhatia, played by Sunita Mani, researching the unicorn. They explain that the unicorn's horn potentially has incredible curative powers and that the horn continues to emit a strange energy as though it's still alive.
I actually really enjoyed this scene. I'm kind of a sucker for media that takes traditional magic and myths and stuff and tries to apply science to it. Yes. I find that just a fun concept, and I enjoyed that part of it. I liked the part a lot where Odell, the patriarch of the family, is saying, once we've synthesized this, we're gonna be rich or whatever. And the scientist says, we can't synthesize this. These proteins, these molecules cannot exist as far as we're concerned. There's no way to recreate that. I really enjoy that sort of trope where, we're taking magic and we're showing what it would look like if we analyzed it with scientific tools, modern scientific tools.
They just need some dino DNA and then they can make it work. Some frog DNA. Yep. I liked this scene as well for slightly different reasons. Usually in movies like this, the scientist is the truth teller who is trying to warn people against the dangerous possibilities, the dangerous potential, and you shouldn't play at God and who knows what we're working with here. But They kind of seem like really along for the ride.
Yeah.
Like they do try to explain the limitations of science, but at the same time, they never really try to warn off the family from what they're planning to do. So I thought that was a little bit funny. And also, I guess this is as good a time as any for me to say that I like Sunita Mani a lot. She was in the Netflix show Glow.
Mm.
R.I.P. Glow, gone too soon from this world. So Odell is treated with a concoction derived from the powdered unicorn horn as a sort of Hail Mary. He's sure his death is imminent, and on his presumed deathbed, he promises Elliot that he will get royalties for the discovery of the unicorn. But hey, it turns out the unicorn horn worked. Odell is instantly and completely cured of his cancer. A new man, he throws out his cane and medical equipment. The researchers rain on the Leopold's parade just a little bit and explain that they don't know how to reproduce the horn's protein sequence yet, so they have a limited supply of the cure, only what can be harvested from the unicorn's body. The Leopolds aren't too pressed about this, though. After all, limited supply increases demand, and they gleefully go through their figurative Rolodex of wealthy friends to decide whom to extort first. The Leopolds celebrate completely over the moon, and Elliot joins in to help them.
I thought the scene was kind of funny.
Yes.
These characters were pretty one-dimensional, but I did think it was fun that they were going around selling, this precious rare unicorn blood for lots of money to very wealthy people. And the way
Yes.
they'd already like figured out units of measurement for it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I thought that was kind of fun.
And keeping enough for themselves so that they could
Yeah.
still stay young and rejuvenated themselves. Yes.
Yeah.
Also, during this party scene, I had another Chekhov's unicorn blood bag.
That is exactly what I had written down.
Perfect. Shepard kind of slyly pockets this bag of unicorn blood. And my guess was that the payoff would be in a moment where it seems like all hope is lost. I think maybe Ridley perhaps is on the verge of dying, and it seems like there's nothing left to heal her, but Elliot finds the blood bag on Shepard's body, let's say, and uses it to revive Ridley. So that was my guess for the unicorn blood bag.
My guess at this point in the movie, I still had hope that there would be some character development somewhere in this movie. And so I was hoping that he was going to use it himself to save either Elliot or Ridley.
I appreciate you having faith in Shepard.
I was like, there's got to be something to these rich people. Like,
yes.
Someone's got to go in a less crap direction as a person, right?
They have to have some sort of redeeming qualities, right?
Yeah.
A redemption arc for someone.
Yeah, well, otherwise, that's kind of boring otherwise, right?
It's true. We do see them in this scene using the unicorn blood as a cocktail mixer.
Yeah. Yeah, the different ways that they ended up utilizing the unicorn were kind of funny to me.
Yes. Also really hitting us over the head with bad people bad, rich people bad.
Not subtle.
Ridley has a bad feeling about this. She tries to explain the story of the tapestries and how they are a warning to them all. The Leopolds don't listen, and Elliot throws his own daughter under the bus, saying she doesn't know what she's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That night, as the doctors are transporting the unicorn's body down a tunnel of plastic sheeting outside the mansion, the power suddenly, ominously goes out and the aurora borealis appears overhead. Then, the towering shadow of a much larger unicorn looms across the sheeting. Everything's Nosferatu for me these days. I just see Nosferatu everywhere I look.
Yeah, great movie.
Oh, excellent movie.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe I should have a bonus episode just talking about that movie, but we'll see.
I loved it.
I loved it too. The unicorn impales Dr. Song through the chest with its, quote, girthsome horn, as Taya Leone says in the trailer. The security guards shoot at it frantically, but the unicorn takes out a few of them. It's worth noting at this point, as Rachel mentioned before, the unicorn looks nothing like a rainbow-colored Lisa Frank trapper keeper. It has mangy, dark fur, a gruesome, jagged horn, clawed hooves, and sharp fangs. So it's very monstrous looking.
Yeah, as I was watching this movie, I just kept thinking how, there's no way, I think, I could be proven wrong and I would be happy to, but I don't think there's any way you can make a unicorn into an unironic horror movie monster. I just don't think that they could do it unironically. Like, I just don't think it would work
I
because
see what you're saying.
they did make the unicorns pretty monstrous, but like, just hearing the neighing in some of the scenes was genuinely funny. They kept doing the
Yes.
trope where like, for most of the movie, you don't actually see the unicorns like full on, which I think was a
Yes.
good move because the CGI was not great in this movie.
No, it was not.
Yeah. So I think that that was a smart move, and you never really fully see the unicorns, clear head on. You're
Hmm.
always seeing them like, in the shadows, you're seeing like a very close up part of just their face, like just the mouth or whatever. And there were a couple shots where like, you'd see like the shadow of a unicorn and then like a lightning bolt would flash or something and it would just be illuminated very grotesquely for
Yes.
just a second. And that is hilarious. There's no way to make a unicorn horrifying as far as I'm concerned. So like I think they were kind of shoehorned into making this funny even if they didn't want to initially. Like even if initially they were like, let's make a horror movie about a unicorn, I don't think it would have worked.
I think that's a very valid point. Maybe they decided to make this pivot when they realized just how bad their CGI was, because I do think it is impossible to make these particular unicorns in this movie scary. And I think a large part of that is, in fact, the poor quality of the CGI, because
Yeah.
I never at any point felt that the characters were in danger because
Yeah.
they were under siege by a CGI creature that definitely couldn't hurt them in any way whatsoever. So I think it had no choice but to be ironic, like you were saying.
Yeah. And also horses as animals are kind of just big derpy dogs in personality and I don't know. I just don't know if I could look at that and think it's scary.
That's a good point. Although riding on horseback is a little scary for me personally because they're
Sure,
really
sure.
tall. I get
Yeah.
up on a horse and I'm like, damn, the ground's really far away. Also, don't walk behind a horse. They will kick you.
Yes, yes. There's definitely danger to be found amongst a horse, but maybe not like eldritch horror.
No, no, definitely not. Yes, the not so scary unicorn then attacks the car where Ridley had been hiding. She runs away only to be cornered, but the unicorn doesn't attack her. It too seems to be speaking to her and extends its glowing horn toward her. But before she can touch it, the unicorn is wounded by gunfire and runs off. So this entire action attack scene has so many parallels to Jurassic Park. I feel like this also has to be intentional. After I saw the movie, I read a few reviews, and apparently this is not a unique thought I had to compare it to Jurassic Park, but I just feel like the parallels are so shot for shot even sometimes. So for example, when we see the unicorn silhouette through the plastic sheeting, I'm like, oh, this is like that part in Jurassic Park where Lex is holding the jiggly jello in her spoon and she's terrified by seeing the shadow of the velociraptor playing across the mural. I'm like, that's almost exactly Jurassic Park. And then when Ridley is trapped under the overturned car and the unicorn is pacing around it, I'm like, this is the T-Rex trapping the kids under the car, with all the security guards shooting at the unicorn, and we just see brief flashes of it in the sparks of the gunfire. I'm like, this is the opening scene of Jurassic Park where Muldoon is like, shoot her, and you only see these tiny glimpses of the velociraptor. Also, they don't imply that the unicorn's vision is movement based, but Paul Rudd tells Ridley not to move when she's under the car. And I'm just like, this is so Jurassic Park. They wrote their script. They did find and replace the word dinosaur with unicorn, and then they tried to make it work. But It didn't work because Jurassic Park was actually scary because they had good practical effects and good CGI.
Yeah, honestly, I'm a little surprised I didn't also make the comparison because Jurassic Park is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yes.
But I'm almost wondering, like, if that's just maybe the low-hanging fruit of like you're taking, the concept of this thing that doesn't usually appear in like a modern setting and
Mm,
let's put it in a modern setting, in this case
yes.
unicorns, and there's going to be a car in there, right? Like how is a unicorn going to interact with a car just like how is a T-Rex going to interact with a car? Like
Right.
but like yeah, I don't know. That is you're totally right. That's such a valid parallel there.
I was also at first like you. I love Jurassic Park, and I was like, maybe I'm reading too much into this. Maybe I'm just like completely Jurassic Park pilled and I don't know what I'm talking about. But then when I read a bunch of other people bringing up the same points, I was like, oh, okay, it's not just me.
Yeah.
All right, but before we see what those nasty unicorns are up to next, let's take a quick commercial break to hear a couple of ads from our sponsors. And we're back. So now the family is willing to listen to what Ridley has to say. She urges them to give the baby unicorn's body back to the parent unicorn and just go. But the Leopolds don't like that idea. They lamely try to justify keeping the baby unicorn, and they decide they need to track down the wounded adult unicorn too, claiming they're doing it for the good of humanity. But we know they're just doing it for the money.
Yep.
This is the scene where Odell is also eating a steak made of unicorn flesh, a purple steak.
I thought that was really funny, actually. Especially considering how they were earlier talking about how very little of this unicorn they have.
Yes.
And he's just eating it. Yeah. I have a note here that I thought I was hoping it would kind of go somewhere. I wrote down philanthropy and morality as performance. Because there's a moment where Ridley is like urging them, like, guys, we can't, this is not something we should be messing with. This is something that we need to just let back into nature. And Belinda comes over and says to her, honey, I understand, but we don't have to perform right now. And yes. Belinda's character, up to this point in the movie, had very, very clearly been demonstrating that, she's the philanthropic one of the family. She helps the refugees, and she manages the nature preserve and whatever. And not really. Like, obviously it's all a performance. I was really hoping this would go somewhere and say something, and yeah.
I do too. This was probably my favorite moment for the Belinda character, when she does sort of confide in Ridley, like, hey, who are we acting for? Like, we can let the mask fall when it's just us girls, when it's just us rich people together here now. I did find that to be a compelling bit of dialogue and a compelling scene. Like, she seems to think that everyone like her just has this like guise of altruism, and she can't seem to conceive of the idea that Ridley might genuinely want to do the right thing instead of just do the performance of doing the right thing. Yeah. I did like that character moment. I did think that was pretty effective.
Yeah.
Elliot agrees to help Odell hunt down the unicorn, even though Ridley begs him not to. Elliot says he's doing it for Ridley and for her mom. Imagine how things might have been if the unicorn's power could have helped her too. So throughout the movie, Elliot is trying to justify everything he's doing and sort of his Weasleyness and his willingness to compromise on his morals. He says he's doing it all for Ridley. He's doing it all for the family to make sure they are financially secure and that his daughter can have a good future. And I don't know, this is maybe the most unlikable I've seen Paul Rudd as far as the character goes. It's almost like he's trying to play against type, but they don't make him so unlikable that it really truly is playing against type. Anyway, it just felt like such a lame character motivation for me, because I'm like, well, she's already in college. She's already getting a degree. So surely they're financially stable enough to send her to college. He's an attorney for a pharmaceutical company. Like, there's no way he's hurting for money, I wouldn't think. So anyway, it did not seem like the best character motivation.
No, and what was disappointing is I think he is the only character we really get any solid development out of.
Yes, it's true. If anyone gets a redemption arc, it's the Elliot character.
Yeah, I feel like every other character, maybe with the exception of Griff, starts the movie as their archetype and ends the movie that way.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Shepard has been snorting the powdered unicorn horn and tripping balls.
I had a really stupid joke written down here.
Please.
Edit this out if need be.
No.
If this is not appropriate. I wrote down, Shepard feeling horny starts snorting horn.
That's staying in. That's definitely staying in. Shepard at this point is getting a little bit concerned about the dwindling supply, and he browbeats Dr. Bhatia into doing some more research into reproducing the horn. Dr. Bhatia realizes that as long as the horn and its magical restorative energies are attached to the baby unicorn's body, it, quote, won't stay dead. So she saws off the unicorn's horn. This is not very scientific, I feel.
No, I don't know. I was kind of like, first of all, if you think that this thing could potentially come back to life, isn't that like in this situation where you want to exploit this animal? Is that not
Yes.
the better option is to just let it come back anyway?
Isn't that the way to solve your limited supply issue?
Yeah, I mean, also, I could not suspend my disbelief enough to get behind the idea that no one figured out until around this point in the movie
Yes.
that the unicorn was going to come back to life.
Okay, so the movie treats this as though it's a surprise or a twist. It's
Yeah.
certainly a surprise to all the characters. They're like, "Oh my god, the unicorn come back," and as the audience is just kind of like, "Yeah, duh. Is this
Yeah.
supposed to be a twist?" It's so telegraphed.
Yeah, like if ingesting the blood of this unicorn can bring like an external creature back from the brink of death, why would it not do that to its own body, you know? Like at least like, you know, as a potential outcome,
Yes.
you know?
And also, they hit the unicorn with the car.
Yes.
They hit it with the tire iron repeatedly. They thought it was very much dead. And then they saw with their own eyes that it was, in fact, not dead.
Yeah.
So it really should not be a surprise to them at all that
Yeah.
the unicorn can resurrect itself.
Yeah.
But yes, this is also a surprise to Ridley. She comes to the same conclusion at the same time. Just as she's about to bail, she sees her dad's crumpled up tissue and decides she can't abandon him after all. She remembers how the tapestries depict the unicorn's death and resurrection, and realizes that the unicorns have the incredible ability to heal themselves, to come back to life even. Wow, who could have guessed? So at this point, she knows that her father is in grave danger. The wounded unicorn he's after is likely already back to full strength, and she tries to text him to warn him, but the reception is very spotty.
Which I guess could have also potentially been a Chekhov's moment.
I considered it as well just because very early in the movie, they established that they don't have good reception, but I feel like that's so par for course in
Yeah.
any horror movie.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, the characters aren't going to have good cell phone reception. We need to establish this at the outset of the movie so that no one's thinking about it for the rest of the movie. So yeah, it just felt very much like paint by the numbers. Here's why the reception doesn't work, because you can't have working reception in a horror movie.
Yeah, of course not.
Of course not. Even if you're billionaires like the Leopolds, you can't have good internet. It's just not
Yeah.
allowed.
I guess they tried to explain it away with, the unicorns disrupted electricity and they had a cell
Mhm.
booster that was electric and yeah.
That's true, yes. They need Starlink.
Yeah. Which realistically they would. I was watching this with my husband and he was like, this doesn't make any sense. They would have drones with like heat-seeking cameras on them that they would be taking
Yes.
out here. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like,
It's true.
like write your billionaires accurately, you know?
Yes.
Don't brush away these realities just for the sake of your plot. Like, be creative.
Think about the billionaires. Representation.
Yeah, representation matters.
Elliot does finally get Ridley's texts, but it's too late. The unicorn attacks the hunting party in the woods and decimates them. Elliot and Odell manage to run back to the mansion, but Odell is surrounded by, surprise, 2 unicorns. 2 of them. He tries to talk them down, convince them that he's a friend, but he's impaled through the skull. Again, I'm getting Jurassic Park flashbacks. I'm like, this is when like Dennis Nedry is like talking to the Dilophosauruses. He's like, hey, buddy. Hey, pal. I'm your friend. And then, no, they eat him.
Yep.
It's never good when I'm watching a movie and it reminds me of a movie I'd rather be watching. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'd honestly rather be watching Jurassic Park for the umpteenth time than this movie, but here we
Yeah.
are.
I will say I do appreciate that almost every single character got gored to death. Like that's the way to kill characters in a unicorn movie.
If you have a unicorn horn, you better be using it.
Yeah. And these unicorn horns, apart from the baby unicorn, the unicorn horns are all kind of barbed. So
Yes.
they do extra damage, which was good.
Okay, here's a bad joke that I will probably edit out. They are not ribbed for her pleasure.
No. You
Maybe
should
I'll
keep it
that
in. Yeah,
we'll see.
keep
Okay.
it.
Belinda and Shepard finally agree to Ridley's idea. They'll give the baby back, putting its body outside for the parents to find, while they escape out the other side of the property with the horn. But with the power out, the gate needs to be manually opened for them to flee. So Griff is nominated for the dangerous job of gate guy. Grudgingly, he does so and escapes off the property himself. It's in this moment where Elliot can see just how disloyal the Leopolds are. Griff has devoted years of his life to faithful service of them, and they don't care. They're willing to throw him to the figurative wolves, in this case, the unicorns. So it's like, yeah, come on, Elliot, get with the program. The Leopolds will show no loyalty to you.
Yeah, I was also around this point in the movie really hoping that Dr. Bhatia would start to kind of matter a little bit.
Yes.
She starts, indicating that, she's having some regrets about what they've been doing. And I was really hoping that that was going to go somewhere and she was going to team up with Elliot and Ridley with maybe Griff. And, they would be like, us versus the rich bastards who got us into this mess. And
exactly.
I didn't really feel like her character ended up doing much, which was a bummer.
Yeah, she was there kind of purely for comedic effect in the end, it seemed like.
Yeah, I guess she sawed off the horn. She did make the active decision to do that, but also, there's no reason why Shepard couldn't have done that,
That's true. Yeah, speaking of Dr. Bhatia, she is also volunteered, quote unquote, by the Leopolds to give the baby back to its unicorn parents. She does, but the parents are not appeased by this gesture. Without its horn, their baby will remain dead. Enraged, the unicorns rip Dr. Bhatia to pieces as everyone looks on in horror. So that's the end of Dr. Bhatia.
Yep. And there was a moment just before she died where I thought my Chekhov's unicorn blood bag would sort of come to fruition, where she says to Elliot's character, she pockets one of the blood bags and she says to Elliot, we've got to take care of ourselves.
Yes.
And I thought he was going to pocket a blood bag, and maybe instead of it being Shepard, maybe it would be Elliot who ended up using the unicorn blood.
Yes. Ridley is very confused. She doesn't understand. She was so sure that that was what the unicorns wanted, their baby back. Ribs. Sorry. I just realized how that sounded when I said it. I want my baby back. Baby back.
This was also silly to me. Like, no one noticed the horn was gone. Like,
I know.
We've spent all this time establishing amongst the characters the horn is important. Ridley knows this. The unicorn is clearly missing its horn. No one was ever like, put the horn back.
Maybe the unicorn needs the horn.
I completely get that the rich people wanted the horn, but like at this point, you are outnumbering them.
At this point, they're just trying to stay alive. And you would think in this, life or death scenario, they'd be like, okay, we'll give the horn back.
Yeah.
I guess.
And I guess we are seeing a little bit of a character development at this, beginning of Act 3 sort of moment in the early Act 3 moment of the movie where, we think Odell is really the big baddie in this movie, but it ends up being Shepard at this point, right?
And it wasn't just the drugs, probably.
Yeah.
Elliot finally, at last, sticks up for his daughter. He quits his job and declares that they are leaving. But Shepard, the big bad, stops them. He thinks that Ridley is the key to the whole thing. He thinks she's the pure-hearted maiden who can tame the unicorns. But just then, the unicorns break into the mansion. Belinda and Shepard try to hide and come up with a plan to defeat the monsters. Belinda suggests the Jaws approach, blowing them up with Odell's oxygen tank. And she attempts to do just that, even as she's being brutally attacked and viciously torn apart by a unicorn. Mm-hmm. But Shepard can't bring himself to ignite the oxygen with his flaming arrow. He runs away as Belinda, his mom, is killed. This is, I think, a retroactive Chekhov's whatever, perhaps, not one that I clocked, but we do see Odell getting rid of his medical equipment earlier. We do have a little zoom in on him tossing aside his cane and his oxygen tank, so this does come back in that sense. And also, Shepard had a throwaway line about how he picks up and discards hobbies all the time, one of those hobbies being archery. So that had a bit of a payoff as well. So I could classify those as a Chekhov's gun.
Yeah, I do have to give my husband credit. I know he's not playing this year with us now, but I was watching it with him, and he was playing with me as we were watching, and he was like, Chekhov's oxygen tank, and I was like, they're probably not going to do anything with that. And they did, so.
Honorary points to your husband. Again, I'm getting Jurassic Park vibes. This is very much the velociraptors in the kitchen scene.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Elliot and Ridley run and hide from the other unicorn. Elliot pulls the unicorn horn from his pocket, revealing that he took it from the Leopolds as a kind of insurance because he promised Ridley's dying mother that he'd take care of her. Elliot tearfully apologizes to Ridley. He feels like he's failed her, and at last they reconcile with an emotional hug. Ridley is about to tell her father what she saw in the unicorn's vision, but they're interrupted by the unicorn busting down the door. Elliot sacrifices himself, closing Ridley on the balcony and urging her to run as he distracts the unicorn with the horn. So I guess this is Elliot's redemption moment.
Yeah. There was also kind of an awkward, I don't know if this messed with your, immersion, but there was this like weird thing they did where immediately after that, Ridley jumps off the balcony and it's broad daylight.
It's broad daylight.
Like the chase scene inside the house, they're making it seem like it's very late at night, maybe very early dawn. And then the next thing you know, it's just broad daylight. And I was like, was there a time skip?
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah.
I found that very jarring as well.
Yeah, it was very clearly like mid-afternoon lighting. Like they couldn't have even edited it to make it look like dawn lighting. Like, come on,
Yeah, they wanted the creepy unicorns stalking through the mansion to be dark and moody. But then I guess they decided they wanted the next scene to immediately be broad daylight. And they're just like, whatever.
Yeah, I
no one will notice, but we did notice.
Yeah, I found it very jarring.
This movie really plays fast and loose with the timeline. It's a very accelerated timeline. Like all of the events of this story so far has happened over the course of, I guess, 2 days now.
Yeah.
I guess this is day 2 because there have been 2 nights that have passed.
Yeah.
So, even though those scientists were pretty goofy, I guess they must be excellent scientists to discover so much in like 24 hours.
Yeah.
Kudos to them.
And I love that this rich family just had a convenient lab. Like I get that I get that Odell had some sort of terminal cancer, but
Yes. Ridley does try to run away in broad daylight, but Shepard holds her hostage at Arrow Point, using her, the pure-hearted Maiden, and the baby unicorn as bait to lure out the parent unicorns. One of the unicorns approaches and growls in Ridley's face. And I'm like, Alien 3, anyone? I don't know. If you're going to ape other horror movies, like maybe don't take the most iconic scenes from those movies. I'm just like, this is the xenomorph. This is Ripley. Oh, I mean Ridley.
Yep.
Excuse me. Accidental, intentional? I don't know.
Yeah.
But just when it seems like Ridley's time is up, the unicorn peacefully rests its head in Ridley's lap, lulled to sleep. Seems like Shepard was right all along. And Rachel was right. Elliot reappears, luring the other unicorn with the horn he had taken, and just like the first unicorn, this one too falls asleep beside Ridley. Relieved, Shepard calls Elliot his partner and promises him 50-50 share of the company, but Elliot stabs him with the horn, and Shepard retaliates, stabbing Elliot fatally with an arrow. What was the switch that made Elliot suddenly turn murderous against a fellow human being? I don't know. This was a bit also jarring for me. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. We're just like murdering people now?
Yeah. I guess like, Shepard was never going to let the unicorns go, I guess. So he felt like he had to kill.
I must kill.
But I guess it was kind of just the way the movie had to go.
Yes, but also in the next breath, the unicorns kill Shepard anyway. So I feel like if we want a dispatch of Shepard, the unicorns could have just done it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he does get his comeuppance.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention is how I think the movie was trying to be subversive almost with respect to Ridley's character. She's got piercings and she's got an attitude and she vapes, but she's still the pure-hearted Maiden. And I just felt like it felt a little like, okay, yeah. It's 2025. We understand that having piercings and vaping doesn't make you morally wrong,
Yes.
Like I was hoping that they were going to do something with it,
I liked your idea much better of the dad assuming she was a virgin and then having her not be. That would have been pretty funny.
Yeah.
As Elliot lies dying, Ridley runs to his side and the unicorns shake off their slumber to deliver the coup de grace to Shepard. Elliot asks Ridley what the unicorns showed her in her vision. Ridley describes a sort of heaven, a place where everyone came from and will go back to, where her mom is. Elliot says maybe he'll be there waiting, and then he dies. Oh no, I'm sure he'll stay dead. The unicorns gently drag Elliot to their baby and place the severed horn at the baby's head. The parent unicorns touch their glowing horns together, summoning a crackling ball of energy between them. The baby unicorn's horn fuses back, and Elliot's hand shoots up to grab the joined horns. His eyes open, and he sees the same vision that Ridley witnessed. The ball of energy explodes, and the unicorns emerge with white fur and golden horns before all three of them run off into the woods reunited.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the unicorns have been cleansed of their evil.
Yeah. One thing that I kept thinking that I was, once again, hoping that they were going to mention or do something with is the first unicorn we see in the movie is the foal unicorn, the baby unicorn that they hit with their car. And this looks, for the most part, like what we expect a unicorn to look like. The horn is a spiral. It's smooth. It looks pure and
its fur is white.
Yeah. And then, the rest of the time throughout the movie, the unicorn's parents are monstrous looking. And I was hoping that was going to be important thematically, like our assumption of what a unicorn is really just like a baby unicorn. And I was like, that would be an interesting thing to explore. I wonder where they're going to go with that. And they didn't. It's just when they're mad, they start to look monstrous, I guess. I don't know.
That would actually be very interesting. That could have been like a representation of, let's say, like moral relativism. And the older you get, the less pure you get, just unavoidably or inescapably, like through experience. You have to give up part of your innocence or purity the older you get. That would have been really interesting.
And it could have tied back to that scene with Belinda and Ridley where she was like, you don't have to perform anymore,
Yes.
Where Ridley is still this idealistic teenager or something, but ultimately didn't go anywhere.
We're giving the movie too much credit.
Yeah.
Elliot and Ridley also reunite. They tearfully embrace, but their happy moment is short-lived when Griff reappears with the police in tow, and the father-daughter duo are arrested as suspects. Because, it looks hella suspicious with all the bodies laying around.
It does, but like, this was the point where I was like, okay, Griff, whose side are you on ultimately? Like,
and it's like, I assume Griff would try to stand up for Elliot and Ridley.
Yeah.
But also, can he really come out and say there were killer unicorns?
But another thing that my husband pointed out with regard to, like, let's be realistic about the billionaires, there would be cameras everywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
There would be security cameras on every inch of this property. This is, like, we have evidence, right? Realistically, there's going to be evidence that this happened, so.
Totally, yeah. Handcuffed in the back of the police car, things aren't looking good for Elliot and Ridley, but at least they have each other. Smiling, Ridley rests her head on her dad's shoulder, obviously a callback to the opening scene, and they reassure each other that they're going to be okay. Then the unicorn family emerges from the woods and gallops alongside the car. Elliot waves at them, but then quickly deflates at the look in their eyes. They're not here to help. They're here for revenge, ? The unicorns ram the car off the road, and we cut to black and then the title card once more. The end.
Yeah, this ending was a mess.
It was a mess.
So it sounds like we interpreted the ending differently.
Okay.
Because I thought they were trying to help Ridley and Elliot. And they were going to crash the car and then revive
Revive
and Elliot,
them.
Because they crashed off a cliff, so...
That's true, yes.
I thought they would revive them, and the poor innocent cop, in this instance, is just dead, and they get to just be on the run forever. I don't know, I don't know what the idea behind it was, but...
I think that's definitely a fair interpretation, too. I'm not entirely sure what the movie wants to imply, but also at this point, I'm like, I feel like I don't care enough to really think about it that much.
Yeah.
I did also at first think, oh, they're here to help. Like they've shown up to be like, oh, we're going to help you escape from this situation here.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what made me second guess that is just that I don't know why they would decide to help Elliot and Ridley ultimately, because at the end of the day, Elliot murdered their child.
Yeah.
So they don't seem that forgiving. But then if they're not that forgiving, why would they have resurrected Elliot in the scene previous? So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the unicorns are on their side or not.
Yeah, I think your interpretation is also perfectly valid because I don't think the ending of this movie was trying to say anything.
No, I don't think so either. I think they were like, oh, this would be funny if the
Yeah.
unicorns rammed the car off the side of the road and off a cliff.
Yeah, if all they had done was just run in front of like the cop car's dash cam, sure. They're just like, "Hey, we got you. You don't need to go to jail," as if they understand the concept of that.
Yeah. Well, that's the other
Whatever.
thing. I'm like, do they understand the trouble that Ridley and Elliot are in? Like, do they have a conception of the human world where they're like, uh-oh, our newfound friends have been arrested. They're in trouble. They're going to be arrested for more. Yeah, it does presuppose that the unicorns know that Ridley and Elliot are in trouble and the consequences of their actions going forward. And I'm like, would the unicorns know that?
I guess it's valid to say they might.
They might,
It
yeah.
was it was pretty heavily implied that the psilocybin nature of the unicorn horn opens your mind. Shepard kept saying, "I'm a genius now," as he was snorting the unicorn horn because I
He
guess
goes all limitless, kind
yeah,
of.
exactly. So maybe the unicorns just kind of know how the universe works.
Well, and to be fair, I guess the movie does imply that the unicorns and humans all come from the same united great
Yes.
energy source or life or something like that. So yes, maybe the unicorns are more human than I am giving them credit for, and they
Yeah.
are just helping out their pals.
Yeah. I have another question for you. Were you equally as confused as to how the hell these unicorns made it to northern Canada? Like, they are a
Oh,
cryptid from northern Europe.
that's a good
I
point.
just kept thinking, like, did they cross from Russia to Alaska? Like, or were they brought over on a ship? Like, how did these unicorns get to Canada?
That's a very good question. I guess I just sort of got the impression that the forest itself was sort of magical in a way, and it
Yeah.
just birthed these magical creatures.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe there's just unicorns everywhere and we don't know about them.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think that's valid as well. They do kind of spend a lot of time establishing early on that, like, this is a very wild, heavily protected area that the rich people then purchased to personally exploit under the guise of furthering the protection. And
Yes. I also thought from the trailer that perhaps the evil billionaires knew all along that there were unicorns in the forest, and that was in
yeah,
fact why they had decided to live there with the hopes of finding and capturing them. So that was a little unexpected, but I guess that's just because I misinterpreted the trailer.
yeah, no, like I said early on, I got that vibe as well, but I really thought there were going to be zombie unicorns, and I was kind of
Yes.
disappointed that there weren't. Like,
Zombie unicorn would have been fun.
yeah, I think that would have been a really interesting direction to go. Like, take, this thing once again that symbolizes purity and innocence, like historically in media, and just make it into a zombie. Like we can understand the motivation of like trying to protect their young, right? But
Mhm.
if it's just a zombie out for brains, like,
I think that speaks to one of my underlying problems with this movie is I really wished it had just committed to being more madcap and more over
yeah,
the top, which a zombie unicorn definitely would have been.
yeah,
And I would have loved that. And I don't think a horror movie needs to have a message or a big idea,
yeah,
but I think that this movie tried to have a message or a big idea, whereas where I think it ultimately failed. I'm like,
yeah.
no, you should have just leaned in to the silly stabby unicorn bit and just kind of left it at that.
Yeah, I think of other movies that handle some of the same themes. For example, Hide and Seek. It's about a woman who marries into a very wealthy family who designs board games. And in Hide and Seek, you have the wealthy billionaire family, and they're also kind of over the top rich shitheads. But I feel like there's some depth that you start to get, kind of sprinkled into the narrative as you continue to watch. And I don't know that it's necessarily saying anything other than rich people kind of suck, which is fine.
Right.
But like it didn't need to say much more than that. It just,
Right.
it's just a fun time to, watch someone kind of an underdog character take on insurmountable odds and,
Yeah,
like that's just kind of fun. And I feel like this movie didn't fully land in that respect. Like if you're going to
I
introduce the
agree.
rich shits, it's not necessarily enough just to see them get viciously gored by a unicorn. You know,
Hmm.
like you want something to matter. You want it to feel a little more fulfilling than that, I guess. I don't know.
Absolutely. It's like, yeah, I guess we can cheer that they got their comeuppance or whatever, but it did not feel as satisfying as it could have. And also, you mentioned hide and seek. The villains in that movie did seem to have more nuanced motivation than just, we're going to make a lot of money. So that was maybe a reason why that movie was more successful as well. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, like we said, what other messages does it have? It raised the question, when do the ends justify the means? But then it didn't really explore that either very much. It also raises the question that most creature features posit, which is, who's the real monster? Could it be men? Could it be
Yeah.
humans are the real monster? And it's like, oh, wow, never heard that one before. And I don't know. They just felt
Yeah.
very trite and predictable. This is where I felt the most let down. As we were saying, I rely on A24 for something subversive, something that's going to surprise me. And this was maybe the most conventional, most predictable movie I've seen in a while.
No, I agree. Like I had a fine time watching it. I had some
Oh,
laughs.
yeah.
I had
Yeah.
some, the humor of a neighing unicorn attacking someone
Yes.
in the dead of night is kind of funny. So like I think that they had some good instincts there and just like, this
Yes.
is a funny idea. But like you mentioned earlier, it's not a good sign when watching something makes you wish you were watching something else.
Right.
And that just kept happening to me. I kept thinking
Yes.
I would rather watch Common Side Effects right now because that's a show that really knows how to handle this, I guess, very American anxiety of like evil healthcare
Yeah.
organizations. And I didn't even really like get a good sense that these were like healthcare or that they were a pharmaceutical company even.
Hmm.
Like I felt
It could
like
have
that
been
was
any company.
exactly, yeah.
I promise this is the last time I'll bring up Jurassic Park, but Jurassic Park does explore a lot of similar themes,
Hmm.
human hubris versus uncontrollable or unknowable nature and where that leads us. And I do feel like Death of a Unicorn was trying to speak to that a little bit, but again, just done much more deftly in other movies.
Yeah. I also felt like it was trying to explore, like, the concept of man disrupting nature and destroying nature, which, like, just, I don't know, it fell flat again.
Yeah.
You know?
We have Avatar for that if we want to
Yeah.
get hit over the head
Yeah.
with that message.
Exactly.
The James Cameron movies, I should say. I would never say anything bad about Avatar: The Last
No,
Airbender.
perfect show.
Perfect. No notes whatsoever. To mention a few things I did like, as I said at the top of the movie, stacked cast.
Hmm.
All of the supporting cast is great. The main cast is great. The Leopolds, especially I think Shepard, were characters where you love to hate them.
Hmm.
I would say, as far as the jokes go, there were overall more hits than misses for
Hmm.
me. I don't regret watching this movie. I certainly was entertained when I watched it. I got a few laughs in. I thought that it was silly. It could have been sillier, like a lot sillier.
Yeah. And I think, like, as you said, it either could have just leaned more into the camp and just, like, committed to what it was,
Yes.
or it could have had maybe some more creative writing and tried to actually say something worth saying.
Yes, and also like, it tried to have this emotional payoff with the father-daughter relationship, but I never felt that invested in either of the characters that
Yeah.
ever felt very like cathartic to me when they do patch things up between them. And also to throw in some sort of half-baked spiritualism in the mix with everything else. I think this movie could have benefited from a tighter focus on on the ironic horror.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so it sounds like bottom line, maybe we enjoyed watching it, but wouldn't strongly recommend it. What would you say?
I mean, if you've got like a free hour and
Sure.
50 minutes and you're like, I kind of wanted to watch it, give it a try. I mean,
Yeah. So if there were to be another creature feature made with an underutilized mythical creature, which cryptid would you choose?
hmm. I feel like we haven't really tapped into a lot of like North American
Ah,
cryptids,
yes.
that would be kind of fun.
I was thinking jackalope,
Oh yeah. Hmm.
and then it would have, kind of what Death of the Unicorn is doing. You have this seemingly cute little creature, but then it gores you with its antlers.
Yeah. Has there ever been like a sort of A-list Bigfoot movie made?
I would love to see an A-list
Yeah.
Bigfoot movie.
That would be kind of fun, actually. Like, I mean, can you imagine if they actually tried to take it seriously too?
I would be so on board with that. I would love an actually scary Bigfoot movie.
Yeah, like obviously from, the podcast that Jen and I had, I really love taking unserious ideas seriously.
Yes.
It's just something I find really fun. So, yeah, that would be rad, is like a Bigfoot movie where they tried to make it scary. And I do kind of feel like we're primed for it. We're in a bit of a horror renaissance, They're reviving old monster movies and finding unique ways to make them scary. I'm really excited to see Wolfman.
Oh, I haven't seen anything about a new Wolfman.
Yeah, they're trying
Tell
to
me
make
more.
it scary, which that's not a easy
That's
job.
a tall order.
Yeah, I think taking any of those classic Universal monster movies, they're so done at this point that it's like hard to make them scary. But like, look what they did with Nosferatu. I thought that was a fantastic movie. So
Very scary too.
yeah, exactly. So I'm excited to see Wolfman. I hope it doesn't disappoint.
I'm on board now too. And also I have to plug the episode of Optiat that compares all the different mummy movies.
Yeah.
Love that episode.
Yep.
It's one of my favorites of yours.
Yep.
So everyone should listen to that as well. All right, well, that's going to do it for Death of a Unicorn. Now it's time to move into the game and find out who won. So first, we both guessed Chekhov's Allergies.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my take on it. Let me know if you agree or not. It did have a setup and a payoff, which is instrumental to Chekhov's gun. But the payoff of this comes so soon after the setup that I ultimately don't think it counts as a Chekhov's whatever. What do you think?
Yeah, I kept thinking the same thing. Like, I kept feeling like the things that I either guessed or maybe wanted to guess were getting like quicker payoffs like that. So,
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe we can give ourselves points at the end if we feel like we've done poorly.
I will subtract points for now, but yeah, we can perhaps rejigger in the end. My next guess was Chekhov's used tissue. This kind of had a payoff. So as I mentioned, there's a point where Ridley is just about to leave the mansion. She's in the car. She's like, I'm out of here. I'm going to bail. But then she notices the tissue. She's reminded of her dad. And she's like, nah, I have to stay here to like help out my dad.
Mm.
But that being said, I don't know. So much of a Chekhov's whatever is like vibes to me.
Yeah.
I don't feel like the tissue was that instrumental to the plot that it qualifies in my head. So
Yeah.
I think ultimately I would subtract points for that as well.
Mm.
Next we have Chekhov's vape.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great guess. Unfortunately, it did not have a payoff. Chekhov's Virtuous Maiden legend. This was another guess of yours. I say that you were spot on with the payoff. You even guessed that Ridley would be used as bait to lure the unicorns, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I would award full points for that one.
Great.
And finally, we both guessed Chekhov's unicorn blood bag. Again, I don't feel like this had a payoff. What do you think?
So, feel free to disagree. I feel like it ultimately kind of did, just
Okay.
not necessarily in the way that we thought it would. So first it did demonstrate that Shepard was going to be kind of stealing the unicorn parts to
Yes.
ingest and stuff. So the movie had an intention there that we just didn't
Mhm.
quite guess correctly. But it also did kind of end up being followed through with the moment where Dr. Badia takes one of the blood bags and says, we have to take care of ourselves, because when that happens, Elliot ends up stealing the horn.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
I guess there was kind of a follow through there. Just, I don't know if either of us really guessed the way it was gonna.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know what? Since it benefits me as well, I will agree with you.
Okay.
I will give us partial points for that one. All right, if you'll give me just a moment to tally the points. Beep, boop, beep. All right, the points have been calculated. Our final scores are me with 0 points.
Great.
And Rachel, you are our winner with 3 points.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Amazing. How did I get 3 points?
I know, we didn't even have to give ourselves pity points for the Chekhov's
Wow.
allergies either.
Yeah.
Oh, and also honorary points to your husband.
Yes, I feel like he did better than either of us really. Like,
You know what? That might make him tied with you as the winner,
Yeah.
actually, with the oxygen tank.
I'm sure he'll be really elated to hear that later.
Rachel, I had such a wonderful time having you on my podcast, and I'd love for you to join me again sometime.
Yeah, this was great. Absolutely.
In the meantime, where can the listeners find you online, or what would you like to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, sure. So, if you're interested in checking out Optiot, it is still up. You can find us on Instagram at OptiotPod. That's OPTIOT pod. I think our Twitter account is still up. I don't know if anyone still uses Twitter, but it's probably there at Optiot. We also have a website, onepersonstrashisourtreasure.com.
Awesome. I will put a link in the show notes to your website. And also, thank you so much for listening. If you could please check out Chekhov's Whatever Pod on YouTube. Did you know that YouTube is the top platform for podcasts these days? I got into this business so that no one would have to see my face, but here we are. Anyway, please go check me out on YouTube, Chekhov's Whatever Podcast. A like and a follow really helps me out. And also, please leave a comment. I really want to hear what you have to say. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Chekhov's Whatever. Go to chekhovswhatever.substack.com to follow along with the podcast. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app and leave a positive review. You can also find video clips and full audio episodes on YouTube, so be sure to like and subscribe at Chekhov's Whatever. And finally, you can send email to chekhovswhateverpodcast@gmail.com. All right, let's end this show with a bang.